Hey, wait, is this thing on? Oh, it is. Hey guys, this is, Editor Agent here, and I just wanted to inform you that we have a new goal, and the new goal is 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Yeah, I know, it's a big goal from where we're at right now, but I believe in you. And, you, the viewer, yeah, you, if you look down slightly, yeah, keep looking, more. You see that? Yeah, that's the subscribe button. If you press it, you'll get notified about my videos and content. And every time I post, you will know about it. So yeah. And if you press the like button, you will show even more people about this spectacular content that you so love and enjoy. And also, just a random fact on the screen. There's just, new content that's going to come out when we reach 1,000 subscribers. I'm totally not spoiling anything, of course. But yeah, you know, editor editor agent, I guess, is probably writing some stuff on the screen. If he is, make sure you don't pay attention to it. Yeah, don't worry about it. I am not a sellout, by the way, so yeah, don't worry about what it says on the screen. Just completely ignore that. But yeah, I've wasted your time enough. Unless you didn't do it. If you didn't do it, I'll wait. No, but like seriously, do it. Okay, so you probably did it by now. Back to your regularly scheduled program. Hey, what up, guys? It's Agent What If, and I'm back again with another video. This is the new series, probably the last new series for a while. What if Deku had full manipulation of his body? So yeah, let's just get into the story. Izuku, was not a normal child whatsoever. Izuku's quirk was quite apparent from the day that he was born. Izuku's hair constantly changed color. Izuku constantly started just manipulating his body in weird ways, like his arms and legs growing and returning to normal size, or becoming transparent so no one could see him, or changing his density. It was just really hectic. A really hectic childhood for Izuku, and definitely for Inko. When Izuku finally turned around the age of 4, Inko almost rushed to the hospital as fast as humanly possible, basically ignored all of the stop signs because she really just needed to know how his power worked so that she could control it. So Izuku essentially was taken to the quirk doctor and took in to go to the quirk doctor. When the quirk doctor examined Izuku, the quirk doctor, she basically said, your son appears to have a quirk. Inko said, I already knew that. I didn't come here and spend money here for you to state the obvious. The doctor said, okay, someone has a bad attitude. And Inko then says, what's the quirk? Essentially, the doctor tells her that he has full manipulation of his body and can even just change his properties and just basically do whatever he wants with his body. And Inko then says, really? How do we control it? And the doctor basically says, well, that's up to Izuku. He has to learn how to control his body. I'm assuming that it's some type of neural link between him and his body that allows his body to just like change like this. So he needs to learn how to control it. And then she says, well, how can I teach him this? And the doctor says, well, a couple ways you could probably teach him this is probably teaching him to be responsible. Like, just teach him to be like a normal kid, really. Just teach him to be responsible and be respectful, because his quirk, probably like most quirks, is activated from his mind, right? So if you want his quirks to behave, he needs to behave, right? Inko then, realizing this, says okay, and they exchange a few more words while Izuku sees a lollipop and replicates the lollipop, and it actually comes out of his hand. And then, the doctor says, see, perfect example. Yeah, you need to make sure that he doesn't do that all the time, because he probably wanted a lollipop just then, and his brain sent that signal to his body and did what he asked, right? So you need to teach him to control his quirk, right? Inko says yes. Oh, and by the way, guys, this was a real lollipop. This wasn't like a fake lollipop that was made out of his body. Izuku can straight up create organic material, or non-organic material, like Momo basically, but he's just a little way more overpowered than her. Anyway, so when Izuku was around 4, Izuku had to mature really quickly, and his mother made sure that he matured really quickly, because as you can imagine, well, he was already 4, so he had to mature really quickly, because as you can imagine, it would be very hard to explain to people like why Izuku could change his density, or he could turn intangible, or he could make his body be able to produce air so that he could fly, it's weird stuff like that. So she had to teach him to control it. Since Izuku's quirk was so prominent throughout most of his life, everyone in his class always knew about what his quirk was. And instead of Bakugo becoming like a bully, especially to Izuku, he couldn't, because Izuku really wasn't able to be bullied, because everybody liked Izuku, and Izuku's quirk was the most controlled out of everybody's, because Izuku, he had to learn how to control it, and he's also had it a lot longer. He's had it for 4 whole years, and he's been competent for at least 2 of those years before he turned 4. So right around when he turned 2, from 2 to 4, he started working on his quirk. So yeah, everyone else just got their quirks. Bakugo getting his quirk immediately rushed over to show everybody, and everybody was kind of excited about the fact that Bakugo had an amazing quirk as well, but they kind of just weren't interested, because Izuku's quirk is just so much more powerful, so much more versatile. It's just vastly better. So he naturally began to hate Izuku slightly, because he, in the back of his mind, he respected him because he was powerful, but in the front of his mind, he hated Izuku because Izuku stole the spotlight, even though he wasn't trying, and that's what made it worse, because Izuku just can steal the spotlight without even giving any real effort. Izuku wasn't really a confrontational person. Like I said, his mother made him grow up really, really fast, so he wasn't confrontational. He didn't start anything with anybody. Izuku was just confident because he knew he knew his quirk and how it works. So he had a head start against everybody else. So yeah, Izuku naturally wanted to become a hero because of the fact his quirk is just amazing. So yeah, and we skip actually from Izuku being 4 to 15. Izuku matured more and more and more, and mastered his quirk more and more and more. Like I said, Izuku can create organic and non-organic material, but he can also control the material after he creates it, right? So Izuku can create duplicates of himself that function essentially under an order that Izuku can give them, or they can function as Izuku controls them, for specific tasks. And since he can control the objects and things that he creates, he can also give them abilities. He can give one of his clones the ability to fly, right? By giving them Gran Torino, them producing air underneath their feet, right? Or he can give one of them super strength by condensing their muscles and giving them more muscles, so their bodies get stronger, right? Or making them faster by just making them stronger, or even allowing them to produce electricity, or be conductive, or turn their skin in the middle. It's just ridiculous, right? It's super ridiculous. Izuku's just way overpowered. So Izuku at the age of 15 really didn't care about anybody, not necessarily to a bad extent. It was just that Izuku was kind of nonchalant, because he really wasn't focused on school much, because Izuku was very smart. So school was pretty easy for him, so he was just focusing on getting into hero school. Essentially, the teacher walks in and tells everyone in the class to raise their hand if they want to be a hero. And everyone raises their hand, except for Izuku and Bakugo. The teacher's actually surprised at this, because he actually says, Izuku, Bakugo, you guys don't want to be heroes, but you have such good quirks. Izuku says that he doesn't need to raise his hand because of the fact that he's already applied to a hero school, and the fact that you asked whether or not he wanted to be a hero wasn't really necessary because of the fact that he had already applied, and you already know I applied. The teacher then kind of sighs and says, yes, Izuku, I already knew that you applied. I just wanted to see your answer. Bakugo, the teacher looking at Bakugo was asked why he didn't raise his hand. Bakugo just said he didn't want to be like the crowd. The teacher, respecting this answer enough, basically went on with his day. Everyone else was kind of shocked. They had already applied to be heroes and went to hero school. Everyone was wondering where they went. The teacher said they went to UA, or that they were trying to get into UA, and everyone wasn't really surprised because it was like, well, their quirks are kind of cool and really powerful, so it's not that much of a stretch to imagine that they could get into UA. Then the Bakugo basically stands up and says, "So Izuku, you're trying to go to UA?" Izuku then says, "Yeah, what of it?" And then Bakugo essentially says, "You do understand that if I go to UA and you go to UA, that I'm going to be the top dog in the school, right?" Izuku then says, "You can imagine or you can understand whatever you want. I don't care. You're literally not important to my life. You are non-essential to my life, so do whatever you want, alright?" Bakugo, hearing this answer, was kind of displeased because he actually wanted to upset Izuku, but no one's ever really done that, so yeah. Then we skip the 10 months of training where Izuku just experiments, right? Like, he just makes himself stronger, faster, starts getting used to using those forms. Because typically Izuku never, permanently changes himself because his body naturally, fixes itself to compensate and to, do to naturally without him even having to do it. If he makes himself stronger in order to compensate for the amount of muscle mass that he would have, it basically modifies his stomach to basically break down the materials but actually produce the sugar and nutrients that his body would require, having that much strength and that much muscle. So instead of having to eat a whole lot, his body just feeds itself. It's self-sustaining, right? Automatically. It does so yeah, that's pretty handy. Izuku practices making his clones, and he can even do some stuff changing his hand into blades and stuff, kind of like Venom. Really he's really, really, really like Venom. He can even make full blown technology out of his body, the gun that you see on the, I guess you could call it just the screen. Izuku can make things like that. He can make clothes. He can make shoes, right? So yeah, stuff like that. But even full blown technology, and he can modify it so that it doesn't have to work. Izuku never actually has to go and access internet. So Izuku would never have a phone bill because all of his he makes his own phones, right? And his own phones don't have to operate off of internet connection. They actually operate off of his brain power. So as long as Izuku is conscious, as in he's not knocked out, whether being punched and knocked out or just sleep, as long as his brain is active, his phones and technology have access to Wi-Fi, right? So they don't really need to have a phone bill, right? Izuku naturally lives in a pretty big house because he can make things from his body, so he can make diamonds and gold and just stuff like that. So yeah, everyone actually envied Izuku because Izuku could be easily the richest person in the world if he just sat down for a day and started producing diamonds over and over and over and over and over again. Izuku actually does have somebody recently to the story that's actually lives around him. It's actually Momo, and the reason for this is that Momo actually wanted to learn how to use her quirk like Izuku, because Izuku's quirk is kind of similar to hers. She actually did get her parents to buy a house near Izuku's house. It wasn't that far away already, but a closer house. And she basically goes over to him and tries to learn how to use her quirk. Izuku, not really being interested in teaching people, he basically just gives her these bits and pieces of advice and tells her to figure it out on her own, because at the end of the day, that'd be the most effective way to train her. She thinks that he's actually just blowing her off so that he can go do other stuff, which he partially is, but he's also not lying that her quirk is very specific and not as generalized as his quirk. So she needs to understand it herself and evolve it herself. After that, after the 10 months are up, Izuku essentially walks out of his door in the outfit you see right now. Izuku then, keeps, the outfit on the screen. Izuku walks out of his door, closes it, locks it, and he opens his gate, right? And he sees Momo standing right there. Izuku's like, "Are you still following me?" And Momo then says, "What do you mean? We're going to the same school." Izuku said, "How did you know that?" And she says, You honestly think that I couldn't assume that you were going to UA? You know what your quirk is like? You're definitely going straight to the hero track." Izuku says, "Yeah, I guess." He begins walking, and Izuku then just starts talking to her, like saying, "How funny would it be if I just left you here and like super sped all the way down to the school?" She says, "Well, you still have to see me when you get there." Izuku says, "Touche." They begin walking, and they eventually get to the gates, right? The gates open automatically, and they see many people walking to the door. Everyone assumes that Momo and Izuku are a couple because everyone knows about who Izuku is and everyone knows about Momo's family, so they assume that it was like an arranged marriage or whatever because, they're walking together and they're just friends and stuff. Because, Momo is very rich, so Izuku being able to do what he does with his quirk, and albeit legally, right? Because there's actually no difference between, no visible difference between what Izuku makes and what is actually, made by, the planet or people. So if Izuku made a diamond, there'd be no way to tell that it came from Izuku. So, his quirk is perfectly modified for, breaking the system. But no one be able to tell it was breaking the system because technically all of his diamonds and stuff look identical to real diamonds in every shape or form. So you can't tell that he actually doesn't do it. So everyone just assumed it was an arranged marriage. She starts to blush. Izuku says, "So you heard the rumors." And she then says, "Of course I have. You know who my family is? I have to pay attention to everything." Izuku says, "But we're not dating, so it doesn't really matter what they think." And Izuku continues to walk forward. He actually goes up to the stairs and he begins walking. Izuku, taking extra measures not to slips. And Izuku, not really knowing why that happened, actually does a backflip and lands, in almost like a superhero landing. And he says, "Okay, who tripped me?" And he looks around and sees Bakugo. And he says, "Oh, here we go again." And Bakugo says, "Hey, Izuku, I heard that recently, within the last 10 months, you've been upgrading your life, so to say." Izuku says, "I have no time for this," and begins to walk past Bakugo. Bakugo touches his shoulder, and instead of Izuku, turning around to acknowledge him, he just makes his body intangible and walks clean past, Bakugo, and actually walks through the door. Izuku then basically, once he goes through the door, he basically locks it on the other side, and he says that I'll send one of my clones to unlock the door after I get to class. So he actually does that. Then we get to the practical tests and, the tests in general, really. Izuku passes all of them because, he's incredibly smart, he's incredibly fast, incredibly strong. He's gonna blow them out of the water easily. He makes first place in all of those, right? Then we get to the practical exam. The practical exam is actually quite easy for Izuku because he actually just makes clones and he gives them all the, superpowers. He gives them all basically super speed and super strength and tells them to destroy as many robots as needed, not one more and not one less. And they go out and do that, right? And they then, all merge back into Izuku. And Izuku just, never left, the starting line. Everyone's kind of shocked. And even the heroes in the booth are kind of shocked. Especially the guy, I forget his name, but he actually can clone himself. And Izuku's power actually kind of scared him because he can tell that Izuku's power is a lot more efficient than his. I'm pretty sure he has a limit. Izuku doesn't have a limit to how many clones he can make. The only real limit, if you would call it that, is that Izuku has to still be alive in order to create clones. Because as long as Izuku has his body in physical form, he can create as many clones as possible, right? It doesn't really matter. There's no upper limit. So after this, Izuku begins to walk off, right? And then we actually skip to a day later. A day later, then is the first class ever of the students in class 1A's UA history, right? Aizawa actually introduces himself in this story. When they all come in, he introduces himself as Shoto Aizawa, and they're all pretty, interested. They say hi or whatever. No one's really interested in Aizawa. Everyone's kind of interested in Izuku. Izuku not paying any mind to this. Bakugo paying all the mind to this. Izuku essentially just sitting there in his chair. Aizawa then says, okay, so today we're going to be doing a quirk assessment test to see where you guys are in physical ability, because this is the hero course. So if you want to be a hero, you can't be a weakling. Meet me out in the field in 5 minutes. Your hero costumes will be in the gym, in the gym changing rooms. I'm pretty sure you guys can figure it out from there. And he basically just leaves, closes the door, and walks off. Izuku gets up and he actually changes his school uniform into the gym uniform, and then just walks off, because Izuku actually made his clothes. He wasn't actually wearing a school uniform. He was actually wearing the clothes you see now. He just changed them to look like they were his school uniform, so he can just change them anything he wants. Izuku then begins to walk off. Todoroki takes notice of this change, and so does Izuku and Ida and everybody else, really. Izuku is then walking, and everyone rushes out, especially the dudes. They all rush out to go talk to Izuku. And Izuku basically says, what do you want? And they all ask him how he just did what he did. Izuku says, I'm not at liberty to tell you that, and begins to walk off, but they're still interested. Izuku says this is going to be a really long school year. He meets them out on the field, or they meet Aizawa, and Aizawa essentially says, okay, let's get straight to it. Number 1, come first. And Izuku doesn't actually want to step up first. Aizawa then says, Izuku Midoriya, you're first. Izuku then says, sighs, and walks up forward. He says, okay, you know how to do these tests, right? And Izuku says, yes, I did them in school. And he's like, did you use your quirk then? And Izuku says, no. And then Aizawa says, use your quirk this time. Simple enough, right? In the jumping test, Izuku vastly he actually just jumps up forward into the sky and about 100 meters up straight. And Izuku's in the sprinting test actually made a very big crater in the ground by moving faster than the high frame by frame camera can even see. Izuku basically ran all the way forward to the end, right? Ran back and did that 10 times. Even still, the camera couldn't see him at all. So Izuku passed that. Izuku didn't even bother with the grip test because everyone saw the craters he made just by jumping and running. So imagine what he would do to the grip test. So they didn't really want to waste any equipment. So they were just yeah, we'll assume that you got number 1 on that, and just leave that assumption to the people or whatever. Izuku basically passed all of these tests with ease and secured his spot number 1. Then we actually skip to a day later, and it's actually just normal classes. Nothing much really happens except for there being a lot of chatter about Izuku being the strongest in the school, which is actually kind of interesting because the big 3 are actually being compared to Izuku now, and that slightly is foreshadowing, but not current foreshadowing, so leave it alone. So yeah, but then we skip a couple days, and then we get our first introduction to All Might. But with that, I think I'm gonna leave this episode off, and yeah. By the way, we are currently, the time of this video being recorded, at 562 subscribers. So yeah, make sure to like, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff. You know the drill. The goal is to 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year. Let's see if we can do it, quicker than that. I believe